now that we understand some of the basics of networking, let's get into small wireless network concepts so we can learn a little bit more. In this video, we're going to be talking about SSIDs, WA2 versus WA3, 2.4 gigahertz versus 5 gigahertz versus 6 gigahertz, what wireless signal propagation is, so ranges, obstacles, antenna orientation, and how all that plays a role in wireless. We're also going to be talking about the concept of interference, so how wireless signals can actually be disrupted from neighbors, microwaves, and walls. You need to be aware of what can disrupt a Wi-Fi signal. Lastly, we'll be talking about the basic Wi-Fi setup steps. That way you can get started with setting up a Wi-Fi network. Let's move into talking about SSIDs, also known as service set identifiers. An SSID is the name of a wireless network that devices use to connect. You've definitely seen this if you've connected any device to Wi-Fi. If you're in an apartment or you have a bunch of neighbors around you, more than likely when you go to actually connect to your Wi-Fi, you probably see a bunch of different router names that are either random or custom made. People are very, very creative with the way that they name their Wi-Fi. And if you don't really remember what this looks like, go ahead, pull up your phone right now, pause this video, and look at the Wi-Fi around you. You can turn your Wi-Fi on and off, and then it'll refresh with the current list of all the networks around you, and then you can see exactly what I'm talking about. These SSIDs, they can have really any name. They can be home Wi-Fi, office network, Jim's house, Jim's dog's house. It could be any name really, and no one has any sort of moderation around these. So again, SSIDs and Wi-Fi names, as they're known, can be really any name. Uses of SSIDs are they just help you identify what network you're connecting to. Again, if you're connecting a computer, a laptop, a gaming device, a iPad or iPhone, any device that uses Wi-Fi, you have to connect through the SSID. You have to find it in the list of networks around you, select it, enter the password if it has one, and then it gives you access. SSIDs also allow any device that you're using to make sure that you're on the correct Wi-Fi because you know your Wi-Fi or your router's name through the SSID. Additionally, some routers and some modems and things like that, if you actually go to the physical device for that router or modem, many times on a piece of paper or on a sticker or something on there, it has both the SSID or the Wi-Fi name, and sometimes it even has the password or the default password. By its nature, every router has its own default password. You could change it, you could keep it the same, but if you're working in a corporate setting, you definitely want to make sure that you change that Wi-Fi password. If you're just using it at home, most of the time, those Wi-Fi passwords are pretty long, usually around 10 to 16 characters, and they're not really easy to guess. So you could keep it the same if you want to. SSIDs can also be hidden or visible. So it is possible you can completely hide your Wi-Fi by just going into the settings for your router on your computer and then removing the ability to broadcast publicly. So you can still connect to Wi-Fi, it's just not available in the list of SSIDs. You have to go in and manually enter. It's a little bit more work to do that. So an SSID, it's important because it helps users, whether you're just someone at home trying to stream Netflix or whether you're someone trying to connect to a corporate Wi-Fi, helps anyone connect to the right network. It also improves network organization, and it is important for wireless security. There's a lot of different settings for Wi-Fi encryption and passwords and things like that, but just know and understand we have SSIDs to identify, make sure we're connecting to the right Wi-Fi, and so we can then click the right Wi-Fi and enter our Wi-Fi password to then get connected. Next up is a sample SSID. Normally you would see the SSID here. This is grayed out though, just for security purposes or just for privacy purposes. Normally it can be really any type of Wi-Fi name. And again, there aren't really restrictions on SSID names, so it can be named anything. You can really get pretty creative with this. Next up is WPA2 and 3. They're both Wi-Fi security standards that are used to protect your Wi-Fi, your router, your modem, whatever device you're using. There is WPA2, which is older, and then we have WPA3, which is newer. WPA for both names, 2 and 3, it stands for Wi-Fi Protected Access. So that's WPA, Wi-Fi Protected Access. WPA2 is older and more widely used. It uses what's known as AES encryption. I believe it uses AES 128 or 256, but this is pretty secure. Obviously, AES 256 is a much, much more secure way of protecting your data and your router. So if you can, definitely use WPA3. WPA2 is still secure, but it's less resistant to people who are trying to brute force or break into your Wi-Fi or your network. WPA2 is mostly common with older routers, and WPA3, it's newer and more secure, offers a lot better protection against brute force and password attacks, offers much stronger encryption, and it's used by almost every modern network. For wireless frequency bands, we have 2.4 gigahertz, 5 gigahertz, and 6 gigahertz. These are each bands, and they affect speed, range, and general device performance. 2.4 gigahertz connections, they're very long. They have a good long range, but they're slower, and they're also susceptible more to interference. They're best for basic use and for long distances. For example, if you have the luxury of living in a larger house and you've got a huge floor plan, you might need 2.4 gigahertz. There are what's known as Wi-Fi extenders, though. Those can increase the range, so you can still use, say, 5 gigahertz, which has shorter range, faster speed, less interference, and is great for streaming, gaming, any sort of online meetings or anything like that. But you could use something like a Wi-Fi extender to then extend whatever frequency band you're using. And most routers nowadays can support whichever one you want. 6 gigahertz is newer though. 6 gigahertz, it's very similar to 5. It has a short range. 5 has a short range. 2.4 has a longer range. But 6 gigahertz, it's newer, has a lot faster speeds than both 5 gigahertz and 2.4, has less interference, but it's used with Wi-Fi 6E devices. So 6 gigahertz, it's by far the newest version of Wi-Fi. I think that most devices are probably still compatible with 2.4 and 5 gigahertz. These really aren't the worst in the world. It's not like you have to upgrade to 6 gigahertz. These two can still be supported and still do streaming. They can still do downloads. They can still run with modern day internet connections. But 6 gigahertz is kind of like the up and coming and the newest form of frequency bands for Wi-Fi. We just learned about 2.4, 5, and 6 gigahertz. Now, those do control a lot of Wi-Fi range, which is how far the Wi-Fi can extend out past the router, and speed. But there are other different factors besides the band you're using, either 2.4, 5, or 6, that also impact both range and speed. So with distance, obstacles, and antenna positions, these can all also affect our Wi-Fi and our coverage. The first thing that I want to talk about is distance, also known as range. This is how far a wireless signal can actually travel and how far you can be from your access point or Wi-Fi device with your device, like your computer or laptop, and actually still have a signal or a connection. So with 5 gigahertz and 6 gigahertz, you can't go nearly as far from the access point and still stay connected. On the other hand, with 2.4 gigahertz, you have a lot longer range, so you can go a lot farther with your computer or your laptop from the distance of the access point. So just keep that in mind. That's in terms of bands we're talking there. Now, obstacles, whether it's walls, floors, material, furniture, vehicles, almost anything, concrete, metal, these all cause interference. And essentially, any residential or office construction material is going to cause interference. It doesn't matter if you've got a cabin in the middle of the woods. If you have anything in between that signal and your device, it's going to decrease the amount of range that you have as well as the speed. So just keep that in mind. Now, obviously, some materials are more than others, so it doesn't always affect the wireless signal the same amount, the material, but just keep that in mind, especially for newer constructed buildings. These materials can play a huge role. Again, like I talked about in the previous slide, that's why we have Wi-Fi extenders. That's why we can add multiple access points to be able to bounce the actual signal around to extend it. And that's really, really where this comes into play. Same thing with antenna orientation. Antennas affect signal direction as well as coverage. If the antennas are pointed a certain way, well, whichever way they're pointed is going to have a little bit more range and it's going to have a little bit faster of potential for connection. So vertical antennas, whether they're vertical or horizontal, that also plays a role. So vertical, if they're vertical and they're running more up and down, the antennas are straight up, that's going to play a role. If the antennas are more horizontal and they're just pointed in one direction, that's going to play a role as well. Just keep in mind proper placement on your antennas for your access point, Wi-Fi router, whatever it is going to improve coverage and performance, and it will make an impact. One thing I want to make clear though, one of the most important things as far as wireless signals when it comes to range is, again, using 2.4 gigahertz, using that band for your actual connection, which you can configure in your router settings, and also making sure that you have any sort of wireless extender or multiple access points that extend that range out. So here you can see this concept of essentially us being in something like an apartment, right? We've got a couch, we've got a fridge, and we've got a solid brick wall here. What's most likely going to happen when you're using your Wi-Fi devices or you're using your Wi-Fi in general is your signal is going to be able to spread throughout your home very, very well. But once you start adding multiple layers of material such as brick, concrete, anything like that, it's going to make a lot more of a difference when you go to try and connect to your devices. So that's why normally you can get away with being able to be anywhere in your house and connect to your Wi-Fi no matter what band you're using, no matter what modem or router or fancy access point you have. But once you start adding in, say, going from a 4-story apartment and then you take the elevator down, that's where a lot of that's going to come from, not just because Wi-Fi can't extend out that far. It's only about 30 to 40 feet. It's that there's so much material that's stopping that signal. So you can see here on harder materials like this, the signal is going to bounce off, and it's kind of just bouncing back and forth inside your home. Again, it can still extend out. That's why you can go on your phone right now, or your laptop, or your iPad, or whatever device you have, and look at the different Wi-Fis in your area, because it can extend past that. But just keep in mind, this is a visual of what that starts to look like when we're exiting our house or when we have a lot of different construction material. For other forms of interference, we have neighbors, microwaves, and walls. So neighbors' Wi-Fi, if they're using the same channels or same bands, that could be a problem. It could also, neighbors' Wi-Fi can also cause congestion and slower speeds. That's not normally as much of a problem nowadays, unless they're, again, on the same exact channel, on the same band. One thing you should know, you don't really have to know this in depth, but each channel, or each band rather, 2.4 gigahertz, 5 gigahertz, 6 gigahertz, it has multiple channels. So there would be like channel 1, 2, 3, 4, so on and so forth for each actual band. So 2.4 gigahertz will have a different amount of channels, and people will use those channels. Sometimes nowadays, Wi-Fi and routers can auto adjust, and they can move to a different channel if someone in the nearby area is using that actual channel. So this is not normally as much of a problem, but it can be if you're using the same exact band in a really, really limited physical area. So if you have like 40 connections in a 100-foot area, that could potentially be where other people's Wi-Fi can impact your Wi-Fi. Next up is microwaves. Microwaves can disrupt Wi-Fi, but it's really not that much of a problem nowadays. These are just potential sources of interference. Again, walls and construction material are going to be a lot more of an interference and have a lot more sway over interference and range than microwaves or your neighbor's Wi-Fi ever really will. These two, you should know about these two, but if your Wi-Fi is suddenly slow, don't think, hey, honey, you've got to stop using the microwave. That's probably not the issue. It's more than likely something that's going on within the ISP speed, the internet service provider speed, or something with the connection or something with the router. So don't really put too much into microwaves and neighbors' Wi-Fi, but just be aware they can indeed affect your Wi-Fi speed and range if they're over the top. And now let's go through the simple steps to set up Wi-Fi. Step one would be connecting your modem to your router. Most devices nowadays, though, they don't require a modem because the router does the job of both the router and the modem. The router often has different types of capabilities directly from the manufacturer to take over the job of the modem, so normally you just need a router. Step two is to power on your router and to make a connection. So however your router plugs in, for example, at my house, we have a coaxial cable that runs into a wall jack. I just plug that coaxial cable into the actual router. From there, because I have an active subscription to internet access for the internet company that I'm using, it automatically gets that connection. From there, all I would need to do is to power on the router and then go through and actually set up my router. You don't actually have to do this nowadays because, again, most routers that come out of the box, they already have a password set that's usually relatively long and random. But if you want to, you can go to your router's access settings by opening up your browser and then entering the router's IP address once you're actually connected to that device. So step three is actually making that connection, connecting your laptop or your desktop computer to the router with the settings that are laid out either in the manual or that are directly on the device. Normally there's a little sticky, either a small sticky, kind of like a sticky note almost, or a label on it. And you can look at the SSID and the default password, connect to that SSID from your laptop or computer and enter the default password, and then go into your browser and find the router's IP address. Normally that'll be listed in the manual or somewhere on the actual router. That way you could just type it in and then go to the web-based portal. So once you enter the IP address, you press enter. It's almost like visiting a website. It's going to take you to this portal where you can then manage that router. But keep in mind, you have to be connected to the router through the actual Wi-Fi in order to actually manage it. You can't manage the router from really anywhere else. You have to have a local connection to that router first. So pretty simple, just make sure it's powered on, make sure there's an active internet connection, and then connect to that router from your device. From there, you could set the SSID, whatever name you want. Again, it's not regulated, it's not monitored, so you could set it to whatever you want, and then you could set your Wi-Fi password. Essentially here, again, you're naming it and securing it. One thing here, normally it does allow you to choose your security type. I would just choose WPA3 because that's the most up-to-date encryption type and security type for Wi-Fi nowadays. You can use WPA2 if it doesn't support WPA3, but almost all modern-day routers support WPA3. One thing I wanted to talk about, there are other different types of encryption for Wi-Fi, but pause here because WPA2 and 3 are the most secure. Don't use WEP, don't use WPA1 or WPA. You want to use WPA3 ideally, or if you don't have that, WPA2. Again, do not use WEP or WPA1 or WPA because those are extremely outdated and people can hack into those. So use WPA3 ideally. One note that I want to make sure you're aware of here is most homes nowadays, they just have a router, and the router is really a modem router combo. So it depends. If you go out and you buy a router from a store, if you go out and get a router from your internet service provider, more than likely the router is just going to be one item, and it's just going to do the job of the modem and the router. It's like a combo device. Don't overthink it too much, but essentially, just so you understand how this works, if you had a separate modem and router, the modem would receive and convert the internet signal from your internet service provider or your ISP, and then the router, which would be a separate device, would share that connection with Wi-Fi or with a network cable to your different devices. So keep that in mind. Modem does a job of getting the signal from the ISP, and then the modem takes that signal, gives it to the router, and then the router is able to display Wi-Fi and provide Wi-Fi access. But again, in 95% of situations nowadays, the router does the job of the modem, and the modem is not a standalone device. How it used to be was you used to need both a modem and a router. But we've gotten to the point where technology is advanced, thankfully, and we don't need that type of setup anymore. So that's it for this video. We covered all of the basics of smaller Wi-Fi networks and Wi-Fi in general.